Welcome back to the Bullpen Mafia. In the shadow of Lone Depot Park. Again, no meaningful baseball being played there. We are without Toad today, so it's me and Petey. I feel like we're playing musical chairs here, man. We're keeping the listeners and the followers on their toes. Petey, what's going on, dude? Talk to me.
Nothing. Actually, I was just gonna let everybody know. I put Icy Hot on when I ran upstairs here after the Dillard interview, and it's like burning the eyes right now.
Wait, why? Why did you put on Icy Hot?
You know, Javi, I think I slept wrong last night. Neck's a little stiff. Having some trouble turning left and right here, getting a little old. Played a little golf yesterday too, so I think I try to lay into a couple drives, a little scramble format, out there. So obviously getting into a couple, but like my boy Tim Dillard says, and you guys will hear him soon. Next up for me is not the ibuprofen, but the IB playing, baby. I got to get back on the course tomorrow morning. So, a couple ibuprofens, a little Icy Hot, and I'm back out there.
Pete, are you scrambling tomorrow? Or it's just you.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm gonna play a customer round tomorrow. I've had a pretty good week, dude. I'll tell you, I don't know what you guys got for weather down there, man, but it is like we're seeing frost in the mornings and we're seeing 70s in the afternoon here.
Dude, it's getting nicer here. I think we had the storms the last couple of weeks. And for anyone listening on the west coast of Florida, we hope you guys are all right. I know we have some loyal listeners. Our buddy Lawrence Pardo in the Tampa area, that whole area, man, back-to-back storms, just absolutely wild. But things are getting cooler. I mean, today it was 70, 78 degrees, I think, when I got out of the car. So it was nice. I mean, it's much better than the 90 we're used to, you're sweating your, what off when you walk anywhere. But, yeah, bro, I mean, things are looking up. The weather's changing a little bit. I'm going to be in New York this weekend. I saw the weather in New York. Right. We got a potential for a Subway Series. I think Toad's going to be in New York the weekend after that. So if there's a Subway Series, Toad might be. Wow. Toad's going to be around. If anyone's listening and has some extra tickets, I know we had our guy Dan Hines on. Dan's at Game 4 right now, and if you haven't listened to last week's episode, please check that out. We had Mets superfan Dan Hines. Dan went to Duke with me. I didn't do a good job of introducing him because he just got right into it. And him and Toad, it was, if you haven't listened to it, it's a good episode. He gives Toad some crap about the Marlins. Toad is trying to be that Mets bandwagon guy now, trying to hop on while things have gotten good. Check that out. Dan's going to help us out with some content. I know he sent over some photos. Toad is posting those on our Instagram. It's a good time for baseball, man. We broke some news while we were interviewing Tim Dillard. The Guardians, down to their last out, hit a 2-run home run to tie the game against the Yankees off Luke Weaver, who Luke Weaver, by the way, looks absolutely phenomenal, nasty, total 180 of his career. Tied the game in the 9th. David Fry hits a home run in the 10th, so the Guardians snatch a game out of the jaws of defeat, come back and beat the Yankees. So, dude, what looked like was going to be a 3-0 series lead, all of a sudden that series looks a lot more dicey, man. If the Guardians 2-1, they got 2 more games at home. I mean, tough to bounce back from the Yankees for sure.
Javi, can I say though, like just so the listeners know, I mean, I'm wearing my Bronx Blue hat tonight for a reason. We had a little conversation with Matt Blake earlier this week, and I kind of threw the line in the water of like, hey man, we got the podcast. You're in the ALCS. You guys got a chance to go to the World Series. What are the chances that we could ever get you on during this and just kind of talk about what's going on? And he said, if the Yanks get to the World Series, there's going to be a little bit of time in between, and he'd be more than happy to come on. So I think if we ever got the Yankees pitching coach in the way that their staff's throwing right now to talk about a potential World Series preview that they're going to be a part of, that's really cool. So, yes, Indians.
That's all it took. All of a sudden, Petey's a Yankee, dude.
I called them the Indians. I'm sorry, the Guardians. Javi, I was chirping the Guardians earlier. I said it looked like they have pizza parties before each game, pre and post. Tim Dillard is going to be on here later on in this episode. One of the things he talked about was Stephen Vogt and the type of teammate, the type of guy he was. Every time I think of Stephen Vogt, I think about that video of his last at bat where his kids announced him, man. And it's like I went from earlier being I keep saying the Indians, like Guardians, like are in the playoffs, but out of everybody, they have the least star power. Like they're just plain Jane to me, to being like, hey man, maybe like I would want to win for that guy too. But that being said, forget it, man. I want Matt Blake on this show before the World Series, talking Fall Classic, talking preview. So Bronx Blue, Yanks, let's go. Come on.
It only takes a friend of the show, Yankee pitching coach, to make Petey all of a sudden. If you're Red Sox fans, listen to what Petey said. Bronx Blue, Yankee, rooting for the Yankees. The tide are starting to turn. We got Toad with the Mets. stuff's starting to come my way, baby. These guys are slowly reverting back. But we were going to talk Mets first because that was the series that everyone had on their minds. The Yankees was kind of, the 2-0 series lead, not a whole lot going on. The Yankees looked like they were dominating that series. But talk about the tides have turned. That is a massive home run. Giancarlo Noel hits a tying home run in the bottom of the ninth, game-winning home run in the bottom of the 10th. You got to think, Petey, it's just funny when you start looking at the outline that I had made an hour and a half ago before the show. Is the Yankees lead insurmountable? Wrong. Not insurmountable.
Well, no, I mean, okay, like you said, you typed this up an hour and a half ago, and we're talking about Luke Weaver being the best pitcher in the playoffs, right? And being untouchable, and all of a sudden, he's human. Now, this is going to take me back to a couple weeks ago where the talk was Clay Holmes, it was the bullpen, it was the back end, and it was, can they survive without a quote-unquote closer? Weaver stepped up, he did his thing. I guess my question is now, is Luke Weaver, has he had enough success? Is he throwing the ball well enough where he can have a short memory and come back and be able to clean this thing up? Or is it oh man, I just kind of blew it here. We were about to go up 3-0, possibly sweep this series, head to the Fall Classic. And now here we go. Cleveland's back in it. It's 2-1. They're playing at home again. You tie it up 2-2. It's anybody's sort of ball game. So I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not insurmountable anymore, but I guess the way I'm going to watch this series is when Luke Weaver gets the ball next time late in the game, is he going to have the same confidence to throw the ball like he was before when he seemed untouchable?
Right. And I point to a moment in game 2, which at first blush looked completely harmless and meaningless. Jose Ramirez hits a home run off Luke Weaver in Yankee Stadium, 9th inning. Again, the Yankees had a lead in that game. Luke Weaver was sort of pitching. It was the first time in the postseason he was pitching where it wasn't a super stressful situation. Didn't pitch himself into a safe situation, but Jose Ramirez hits a changeup out to right field against Luke Weaver. Again, maybe they saw something in that moment, breathes a little life into that Guardians clubhouse, that Guardians dugout, and then you see what happens today, right? Giancarlo Noel gets a hanging changeup with 2 strikes, parks it into the left field bleachers. One of those moments where, again, on the rundown, I'm talking about, can the Guardians get a big hit? Is the Yankees lead insurmountable? Both of those questions have been answered. This is a series again. I mean, first blood for the Yankees. They get up that 2-0 lead. But you come back home, and the Indians get a little home cooking, come back. I mean, that place was absolutely rocking. We just saw clips. Again, we were interviewing Tim Dillard, so please stick around for the back half of that interview. We broke the news because I had the game tracker on. My phone was blowing up. A bunch of texts were sent. I saw Cleveland tied the game. Then they hit the game-winning home run. So, again, this is a full-blown series. We've seen a ton of storylines. One of the storylines going into this series was Aaron Judge not being clutch. I know Toad has harped on that. We've talked about it at length on this pod. Hits a home run in game 2. Seemed like he finally got the monkey off his back, Petey. Hits another one in game 3. Goes back-to-back with Giancarlo Stanton. You said something I think that was perfectly encapsulates what postseason baseball is all about sample size. So I'm going to let you say it, but I think this is exactly what, at least from a baseball player perspective, the thought process is when people say Aaron Judge is not clutch.
Yeah, all due respect to Toad, we love our boy Toad here, but talking about the clutch gene with a guy like Aaron Judge, I said to you earlier, Javi, we are we're going off a sample size of these guys didn't play in the wild card round, right? So they had the DS, and now we're here in the CS. This is a 7 game sample size, and people are out here saying these guys can't get it done in the playoffs. Judge isn't clutch. Stanton, these guys are nowhere to be found in October. And it's like, dude, if this was the regular season, nobody's really ever saying this. If these guys go 0 for 3, 0 for 4, 6-7 straight games with 2 or 3 Ks, yeah, that's one thing. But dude, I'm watching these games. These guys are still hitting the ball hard. Things are happening. And there's singles, there's doubles, there's little things, but it's just because this guy, Aaron Judge or Giancarlo Stanton, doesn't come up with a clutch hit or a big hit every single time he has a runner in scoring position, doesn't mean that the guy's not clutch. All it takes, sort of like it did last night, obviously tonight too, all it takes is one swing, man, to change an entire outlook on somebody and an entire series. So, hey, ain't nobody gonna want to still pitch to those guys, man. He could be 0 for 30, 0 for 40 heading into the World Series, and you're still going to pitch that guy a certain way. You're going to have to pitch around him. I mean, I always laugh at that when people drop to this guy's not clutch, or here we go, come playoff time, he can't get it done. It's like, dude, this guy is one swing away from changing the entire perspective of a series.
Yeah, and I think too what Judge does to a Yankee lineup is there's such a focal point on him that you seem to maybe forget about some other guys. We saw Alex Verdugo get some clutch hits in the latter half of games where you're like, maybe is Verdugo the guy you expect to be getting clutch hits in the postseason? Probably not, but that's probably a product of, hey, we're hyper focused on Juan Soto, Aaron Judge. You kind of lose a little bit of focus on some other guys in the lineup, and they've taken advantage of that again. This is a series again. And Petey, I'm going to pose a question to you that I found interesting, and I just thought like two very contrasting styles between the Yankees and the Guardians. Yankees have a ton of firepower. You talk about Soto, top 5 player in baseball. Aaron Judge, top 5 player in baseball. Garrett Cole, one of the highest paid starters in baseball. Carlos Rodon, another super high paid starter. So you have a ton of star power, a ton of firepower at the top of this roster. Cleveland Indians, the exact opposite, right? Like, you're thinking about them. Jose Ramirez, obviously a tremendous baseball player, but you look up and down that roster and you try and find names of guys that you don't necessarily see a whole lot. You don't feel like you know them. I know Todd and I were talking about this earlier in the week. You start looking at baseball reference pages and you're like, oh, that's where that guy's from. Oh, yeah, okay, he was here, he was there. But again, more so the journeyman, not the big name guys on the Cleveland Guardians. But what they do have, Petey, is they have a dynamite bullpen. Stephen Vogt knows that if he gets into a game where, number one, he has a lead, number two, he has a healthy and rested bullpen. Obviously, today, with Emmanuel Clase giving up back-to-back home runs in the bottom of the 8th inning, didn't probably work out like Vogt had wanted to. But, Petey, they have 4 guys with 70 appearances and sub-2 ERAs. There were 6 total in Major League Baseball. So 4 of those guys are on the Guardians. The Guardians want to win the game. They want to win the first 5 innings and hand the ball off to their dynamite bullpen. The Yankees want to hit home runs. They want to win with a long ball and star power. What's your preferred style of winning games? What do you think wins in the postseason?
Well, I was thinking about this earlier too, before I even knew you were going to ask this question. Like, not necessarily the question you asked, but just watching these games tonight, man, I feel like the pitching's been outstanding. Like how some of these guys are able to work through some of these at bats and some of these counts and these situations they get themselves in has been extremely impressive. It's a very hard question, Javi, because I feel like the game's changed in a way where nowadays, today's baseball, today's manager, today's pitching coach, today's game wants you to say, let the starter give you 5 and go and let's rely on those arms in the bullpen. I don't know. Javi, gun to my head, I'm gonna say give me the Garrett Coles, give me the Rodons, give me a guy that if he goes out there and do what he's capable of doing, can get me to the 7th, possibly get me to the 8th, and then get me to Weaver. I just, there's too many good. The hitters are too good, these days to kind of get yourself into a situation where, some of these relievers, like you said, Javi, 70 appearances, man, that is so many appearances in the season. And now every single time those guys come in the game, it's a high leverage situation. And now you're talking about putting even probably more innings on them. You're taxing them a little bit more. I don't know. I'm always old school in the thinking of a starting pitcher is going to get me as far as I need to go. And I think I've made it very clear on this podcast that the whole third time through the lineup or that kind of stuff. I mean, to me, you got to throw that shit out the window come the playoffs, man. These managers are here for a reason. Let him go off a field. Let him see what's happening. Obviously, Vogt's got, he did what he did the other night after, what was it, an inning and a third when he went to the pen.
Right.
But again, then you got guys like Boone who, hopefully they see the Coles of the world and the Rodons kind of go out there and they're dominating. And it's like, hey, I'm letting this guy roll, man. I don't really care what's coming from the top. I don't really care what's coming in my ear. I don't care what the third time or what the averages say. Like these are the guys that we pay the money for to win games this time of year. I'm going to go out there and let them do it.
I think that's an interesting point you brought up too about Stephen Vogt in game 2. He has his starter going inning in the third, and a huge situation comes up. Cade Smith is his bullpen ace, right? I mean, in what world do you live in maybe 20 years ago where your best bullpen arm is coming into a game in the second inning, right? And then again, going back 20 years, that this probably doesn't exist, but Stephen Vogt makes, a judgment call, goes and gets his guy with the bases loaded, minimizes the damage, and that kept the Guardians in the game. They were within striking distance the entire game. They kept the Yankees lead at bay. It was a 3-run game the majority of the game. The Guardians had traffic on the bases, just couldn't get the big hit across. Again, seems like a long time ago in game 2, especially what happened in game 3. We're going to keep monitoring that series. It's going to be a great one. I think the next 2 games in Cleveland are going to be an absolute zoo. I cannot imagine that fan base tomorrow night. It's a late game, so that fans in Cleveland are going to have a whole lot of time to get lathered up and show up to the park on a Friday night against the Yankees. That should be a lot of fun.
Go
ahead.
Just like on that I remember watching the Mets game the other night, and they were talking about Peterson like coming out of the bullpen. So they were down when the Mets were down early. They were talking about bringing in Peterson or bringing in your best reliever, when you're behind in the game. And I think the thought process they were saying after the game was, well, at that point, it's a 2-1 game, 3-1 game. Like, we're just trying to keep it where it's at. But again, like talk about like just the decisions that have to be made here when you don't have, this is going to go back to my point a little bit. When you don't have a starter that you can rely on, or you don't have a guy that can necessarily go deep into the game, then you're stuck with decisions like that though. Like, you bring these guys in. I mean, yeah, if you have a lead, it's one thing, but if you got to play from behind early on, man, you're kind of, you're burning an arm in the second inning, third inning that, God forbid, if that game turns around, then what do you do on the back end?
Yeah, and look, I think this format too, the 2-3-2, so 2 travel day, 3 straight games, travel day, another 2. Those 3 straight games poses an interesting, conundrum for some of these managers. How do you keep guys? How do you spread them out over 3 days? Rosters are limited in the playoffs. So again, a ton of questions that are going to be asked here. And this is, again, the Yankee series just totally turned on its head with what happened here tonight. We're going to see, obviously, this episode will be released on Monday of next week. So by that point, who knows? But tonight was a tremendous day for baseball. Moving on to the other series, Petey, which I think has been just as spectacular. Awesome. The Dodgers and the Mets. For a series that we're looking at these 2 teams that, again, both came into the playoffs to polar opposites, right? The Dodgers ran out to a huge early lead in the NL West, fell back, had a ton of injuries. I didn't want to say they snuck into the playoffs, but got into the playoffs not as hot as some of the other teams, dealing with a ton of pitching injuries. Again, it seems like their roster of disabled list would be an all-star team at this point in the season. They are piecing it together. They had a great 5-game series against the Padres, winning 2 of those final 3 games in shutout fashion. They play the Mets. Right now, it's a 2-1 series lead for the Dodgers. They're leading 3-1 in the 3rd inning. But again, this series, Petey, has been one that has been stars are out to play. The Dodgers win game 1 in a shutout. The Mets come back in tremendous fashion, win game 2 in Chavez Ravine against the Dodgers. Game 3 probably went a little different than anticipated. I thought the Citi Field was going to ready to explode. The Dodgers win comfortably 8-0. Again, your boy Kike Hernandez seems to be the best player in baseball when October comes around.
Dude, it's unbelievable. And they were talking about it last night too. And they were talking about like the crazy thing about Kike is like Kike's coming off the bench all year long. Kike's filling in for a lot of these, like you said, this star-studded lineup that's on the DL here. And the only reason why Kike's in the lineup is because of the injuries. And as crazy as that sounds, like, back in what was it? When he was with the Red Sox 3-4 years ago, I'm trying to think, was it 3 or 4 years ago? Was it 22 maybe? 21 or 22, man, when he just went off. I think he had 8 home runs that postseason or something crazy, man. He just was white hot out there. And yeah, man, I think he just finds a way. And I also think Kike's that guy that's like, he's so motivated, to go out there and do what he's doing. I think he said it when he was in, Boston, like he's always sort of, I don't want to call him an underdog, because I mean, the guy's been in the big leagues for a long time doing his thing, but it's not like Kike Hernandez is a guy that teams are going to call this offseason and say, hey, we want to pay you, $15 million a year to come and play center field for us. Or we want you to be a utility guy. Like he's a reliable guy off the bench that somehow, some way, when October rolls around, man, like he sees beach balls out there. And I think he's obviously surrounded by a lot of good guys in that lineup. I think he's hit at the bottom of the order for those guys, but just like, to see some of that star power, he's getting pitched to. The guy nobody has more fun on the baseball field, man. He's so much fun to watch.
From one unsung hero on the Dodgers to another unsung hero on the Mets. And I'm saying unsung because a lot of America probably doesn't know his name yet, but they will very soon. Mark Vientos has put on an absolute clinic for the Mets this postseason in a postseason where they're not really pitching to Francisco Lindor. They're trying to pitch around him. They're trying to pitch around Pete Alonso. Mark Vientos has been the recipient of a whole lot of fastballs. He's hitting 378 as of, before this game started. He's hitting 378. He's got 3 homers, 11 RBIs, OPS over 1,000. Again, a South Florida kid who wasn't necessarily penciled in as an everyday starter at third base for the New York Mets. Had some stints in the minor leagues this year, got sent up and down a couple times, finds himself right in the middle of the batting order, having a huge impact. Petey, this series seems to be like, this back and forth punching match. We don't necessarily know what we're going to get out of games. I know Smoltz and Francoeur said yesterday on the telecast, they were like, we've had a shutout game 1. Game 2, the Mets win. Game 3 is a shutout. Game 4 has the potential to have a extra innings game. We need to see some drama, and we're certainly seeing it. It's 3-2 right now. I believe it's going into the 4th inning. Baseball's having a tremendous moment. Again, the star power in these series is awesome. We're watching, these back and forth games. Petey, something that I think I want to get your take on. There is the potential for a Subway Series here, and I think if Major League Baseball gets a Subway Series, this is going to be the postseason that people circle and remember, like, hey, I got back into baseball. I started watching baseball again because of what happened in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I can't hide behind the fact that I said earlier I want the Yanks in the World Series. I have Blake on here, but yeah, I mean, it's obviously interesting from the the Mets story is fantastic, right? The Yankees are who they are. Everyone knows who, that story, but the Mets and how they got here would be really, really cool. And then to battle it out for the title of the King of New York is cool. But I don't know, Javi. I mean, to me, like, you say that, and I would have trouble, saying that MLB doesn't want or need the Dodgers in it, man. You know what I mean? There's so much money there. The way the whole season started out with the Ippei stuff, and Shohei Ohtani in the World Series, man, like against an Aaron Judge type of figure, it's great. It's like if you say Shohei Ohtani versus Francisco Lindor, I don't think it has the same. I'm sorry, against like a
Jose Ramirez.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Jose Ramirez, but yeah, you're totally right.
You know what I mean? It's just like it doesn't have the same ring to it. So I think if you had a New York, LA, that's like number one first and foremost. New York. Yeah, absolutely. I think the MLB will find a way to plug that.
We've had a great time sort of breaking down these series. We don't want to forget the back half of this episode. We have a good buddy of ours, former teammate. He is the pre and post game analyst for the Milwaukee Brewers on Bally Sports. We don't know if it's Bally Sports anymore. Whoever puts on and produces the pre and post game show. He's also a color analyst, Tim Dillard. A tremendous interview with him. Talk about his playing career. Talk about his broadcasting career. He gives some insight into the Mets series. He did see the Mets play in Miller Park right before they went on this run into the playoffs. So stick around for that. Again, check out our previous episode with Dan Hines. Dan has been awesome and gracious with his time. He's helping us out. He's been in the building. He's in the building now for Game 4 at Citi Field. He'll be there for Game 5. Petey, man, this was fun. You and I, we haven't done it. I don't think we did a Jacob Barnes episode, but we missed Toad. We got to get Toad back in here. But the three of us are having a fantastic time watching baseball. We hope you guys are having just as much fun as we are. Petey, any final words, man?
Yeah, I just want to say, well, this one will come out Monday, right? By the time we re-record, we'll be the end of next week. We'll get another episode out there by Monday. By then, we'll have a World Series matchup, Javi. So, should you and I maybe go out on a limb here and say what we think we're gonna see here?
Go for it.
I got Yankees Dodgers.
Really, I'm going Yankees Mets, and
okay.
just because I think I'm not rooting for the Mets, but I do think the Mets, there's something going on there, man. I'm interested to see how they bounce back because, again, the Dodgers don't have the pitching. They don't have. Yesterday, Walker Buehler is. I mean,
vintage, Javi. That was vintage.
Vintage.
Buehler, dude.
I mean, dude, his stuff was nasty, and this was a guy who they didn't know if he was going to make the postseason roster a couple weeks ago, dude. So like, there's so much going on with the Dodgers. I keep thinking to myself, there's no way they get through the next game. How do they have enough pitching? And they throw up a 0. Like, it's unbelievable to me. Again, I don't know how the Dodgers are doing it. They're piecing it together. Dave Roberts is another one who gets a lot of, takes a lot of crap for his managerial style. He's piecing this together with 8 starting pitchers on the disabled list. Okay. Clayton Kershaw out for the postseason. We've had, again, take a look at their disabled list. It's a who's who of names, and they're doing it. So I just think the Mets are going to find a way to win their series. And I think the Yankees, and I think Major League Baseball is going to get its Subway Series. And I think that would be tremendous for the sport.
Javi, if Flaherty and Yamamoto can throw the ball like they have the last 2 times out, man, they're going to be hard to beat. It's funny, dude, because you pay Yamamoto all that money, and then you see what happens the first time was that game 2 against the Padres, and then he goes out and did what he did in game 5, man. If that doesn't give you, confidence just through the roof to go out there and shove it up somebody's ass this next time, man, I don't know what does. But I'm telling you, I know Buehler's only probably going 4 max, depending on what you stretch him out to. But if you go Flaherty, Yamamoto, Walker, Buehler, man, and you can kind of carry that through, and you can piece together one more game, and those guys are throwing like they can, good luck.
Well, I was telling Dan Hines, we're going to go out on this, but I was telling Dan Hines, I thought today game 4 was a must-win for the Dodgers because, again, if the Dodgers go up 3-1 with a chance to close the series out in game 5 with Jack Flaherty going for you, you got to win that game 5 because game 6 is going to be a bullpen game. And, again, they've done it before. They've pieced together these bullpens. But I think every time you have a bullpen game, you're opening the door for some funkiness, some craziness, something that is not used to happening. You're having to stretch some bullpen arms out. You need 7 or 8 guys to be on their game as opposed to 3 or 4 when you have a traditional starter. So I think game 4 is a must win for the Dodgers. Hopefully, well, if they can, their recipe will be to close it out in 5 at Citi Field. Again, baseball's having its moment. The postseason's been awesome. Petey, Toad, and I have been all over it. We've enjoyed watching it. We've enjoyed, hearing from you guys. So please let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about, anything that we can, bring to the table. We're watching all the baseball. We enjoy it. We love it. Remember to like and subscribe wherever possible, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, engage with us. And remember to stick around for the back half of this episode with Tim Dillard. We have a very special guest here, and we were just talking off air, trying to figure out what years Petey and our special guest, Tim Dillard, were roommates in spring training. We could not figure it out, but I know Petey wanted to take this, so please introduce our guest.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna say 15 and 16 just for the sake of the podcast, and we're not here fighting anymore about it. But yeah, very special guest here today. One of the best guys that I definitely met in my time with the Brewers. Javi, I'm sure you could say the same. Tim Dillard, you are the man. Thank you for joining us. Tim is now the pregame and postgame analyst for Bally Sports Wisconsin for the Milwaukee Brewers. Tim, 18 professional seasons of baseball. We're going to get into it. That's absolutely incredible. Tim had 73 MLB appearances with the Brewers across those 4 seasons. And I think our viewers will be able to see it in the background there. That famous number 17 with the Nashville Sounds, recently retired. Tim, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Yeah, no. When you say it like that, I'm like, oh yeah, had a long career. But then you're like, he had 73 appearances in the big league.
Yeah, but
not a lot. Yeah, I know. I played a long time, and the whole goal is to get to the big leagues, and you can't control everything. So if it was up to me, I would have played 10 years in the show. I didn't get that, but I did get, I don't know, almost 2 decades in the minor leagues. So ask me questions about the minor leagues. I can answer those questions.
That's why me and Javi love being on here, man. Because it's like we always come on and we'll tell people like, hey, we can't tell you what it was like in the show or give you any of those experiences, but man, we could tell you what it was like to grind it out. And you did for 18 years with some showtime in between, which is cool.
And the clock's still ticking, Tim, right? I mean, you're in the show just in a different capacity now, right?
Yeah, no, I do the broadcasting thing. And you say Bally's. I'm thinking Bally's is like bankrupt.
I meant to ask, are we still doing the Bally?
I have no idea. Well, like all these people are reaching out to me on social media and they're like, hey, does this mean you're still there? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I don't have a contract in place. I don't know what exactly this means. MLB took over all production of like, I think Brewers, Twins, and then maybe somebody else. I'm not on like a text thread or an email thread or anything that says any explanation on what's going on. But yeah, I played a long time, retired basically to go into the broadcasting thing, because as you know, when you're a baseball player, you want to make it to the big leagues. And then there's this overwhelming, like, well, what are you going to do when you're done playing? Like, that's the big question. Like, what are you going to do after baseball? Life after baseball. I mean, that should be the name of every single podcast that has anything to do with the minor leagues. Life after baseball.
Write that down.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Coined it first. Yeah. No, but that's the whole thing. Like, you're trying to figure out what you do next. And I was going back to spring training in 2021 with the Rangers. And John Daniels, JD, the guy that he doesn't have the job anymore, but he was the, head guy, the general manager, vice president, baseball operations. He was like, we're going to bring you back to spring training, but we don't know for sure if we have a job. And we don't want to be the person that fires Tim Dillard, like, because I've always been a fringe guy. I'm the guy that's like, just in case, but then every single year something would happen. So I would be activated in such a way where I actually played a pivotal role. And they were like, hey, if you find something else, maybe pursue that. And the next day, when you get a call like that from the vice president, or the president of baseball, like you think about it a little bit. And the next day I got a call from the Brewers, and they said, hey, if you're willing to retire from playing, we will put you on the broadcast for pre and post game show. And just my wife was like, yes, like 100%. He needs to stop doing this. So yeah, that was kind of what got me out of the gig. But I don't know what it means broadcasting going forward. I usually look better. I comb my hair and do my beard a little bit better than what it is now. But yeah, that's pretty much my entire life in a nutshell right there.
Tim, so you answered Rob Manfred now? Is that boss?
I don't know. All I know is I probably need to delete some tweets.
That's awesome.
And we love to do this with our guests, because I think each story is so intricate and so different, and it's so meaningful in a lot of ways. But we love to ask guys that did have the opportunity and the privilege of playing the major leagues to walk us through their call-up story. So the floor is yours, sir. Tell us how that call came to be, and where you were, where your family was, and sort of the emotions behind it.
Oof. Well, to me, in my mind, I had two. I had the one where I initially got called up. It was 2008, May 23rd, 2008. We were in a tiny apartment in Nashville. I was in AAA, got a call from my flip phone. It was like 6:30 in the morning. My manager at AAA was like, hey man, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm packing. Like, we have a trip. We're going on a bus trip to Memphis. And he was like, yeah, no, change of plan. Come get your stuff. You're going to Washington, D.C. Great. That's awesome. Like, why? What's going on? He goes, oh, yeah, by the way, you're getting called up. And I was like, oh, sweet. So here's what they don't tell you, is that you're flying to D.C. on Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? And the brand new, the Nationals just built their stadium. So it was like $1 billion stadium. And so I woke my wife up. I said, I am going to the big leagues. She didn't seem to care in that particular moment. She was sleeping, but she eventually came around. So she's like, well, I'm going to go too. It's like, all right. So we actually had to use a credit card to buy a ticket for her, a plane ticket to go. The Brewers had my ticket already there, but not hers. So we had to use a credit card, which is the first thing I paid off with my big league check. But flew to DC. I went straight to the field. She went to the hotel, showed up just before game time, went out, played catch, came back in, changed my jersey, went back out for the anthem, go to the bullpen in left center. And I mean, it was a blink of an eye, and they call down. They're like, get Dillard hot. And I'm like, I haven't done anything. Like, I've done a lot. By that time, I'd been a starter, I'd been a reliever, I'd been a closer in some capacity in the minor leagues. And I felt like I was ready for every situation. But as soon as the phone rang and they were like, Dillard, get hot, I was like, I feel like I'd never pitched before, or I'd never played baseball before. I was like, what? You sure? Anyway, got loose. And then they were like, all right, you're in. And they opened the door to the bullpen. And all I could think was like, left, right, left, right, left, right. Like, don't trip in front of 40,000 people at this brand new stadium. And went out there, don't really know what happened. I think I got 3 outs. I found out later I struck out Aaron Boone, who was playing for the Nationals. And even though I struck him out, he was able to recover. He ended up playing, more years in the big leagues, and now he's managing the Yankees in the playoffs. So good for him. He was able to bounce back from that downfall, but struck him out. Got 3 quick outs, came in, and it was a blink of an eye. And that was pretty much it. Went back to the hotel. I was walking through the team hotel, and don't even know the name of it. And I see Jason Kendall from like the hotel restaurant bar area, and he calls me in, and I sat down and we sat there, and he goes, "Dude, it looked like you had done that before. It did not look like your major league debut." And he goes, "That's awesome." He's like, "Great job." And not to a guy that I collected his baseball card, and he's the one that caught me. And to tell me that, I thought that is so cool, because I was a catcher. I was drafted twice as a catcher. So for a catcher to say, "Dude, you look like you'd done that before," that's all I wanted. But then the career didn't go the way I had planned. But the next time my next call up, if I want to use that terminology, was 2011. I wasn't even on the roster and got called up as a sidearmer. I'd went from like 3/4 over the top to sidearm, and the sidearm call up was actually way better because I wasn't on the roster. I wasn't on the radar in any way. And I just learned sidearm, and I didn't even know if I was doing that great. And they called me up. So to me, that almost meant more, because in 2008, I'm throwing 96 miles an hour. I'm 25 years old or 24 years old. And I just got put on the roster. So like I had all that in my favor. So the 2008 one was kind of like, oh yeah, cool. The 2011 one was the one that I was really surprised about, because I was like, this guy over here is pretty good too. Like I'm looking around the bullpen like, me, you picked me. So I don't know. That was my long-winded answer to say, like, somehow my name was called. And I did my best to answer that call.
No, that's awesome, Tim. And obviously spanning across 18 years, man, minor leagues, major leagues, whatever it is, like, there's a lot of ups and downs, right? You talk about going through even an arm slot change and all that. So what keeps you going, man? What keeps you motivated after all that time to, obviously, like you said, you start in the minor leagues, you're grinding your way through, you get the call up, you go back, you go sidearm, you retire, you want to go the media route. Like what is it? What keeps you in the game?
I don't know. I think, what's funny is you see all these shows and movies about the big leagues. You kids play, everybody played when they were kids. The minor leagues is one of those untapped things where people just don't have an idea. Even though there's so much out there, they still don't know what it's like. It's very strange. And there's times, if you play long enough, there's a time during the year where a good game, a bad game, you don't know. You go sit in your locker and you sit there and you look around and go, why am I doing this with my life? Like, I would say every player goes through that in some capacity, and I'm sure doctors do not go through that, because doctors are like, we're healing people. Like they've never questioned themselves. They're doing good work. We're just like, what are we, entertainers? My job is to get somebody out. Sometimes I get them out. Sometimes I don't. So what am I really doing with my life? And so I would say around 2009, I started questioning, like, why am I doing this all the time? And then I realized it was about people. Baseball is a people business. It will always be a people business. It's centered around a game, and there's, of course, the business part of it. But what makes anything successful is the people involved. And the reason the game is so hard is because a lot of times we're worried about ourselves. So 2009 rolls around, and I remember thinking, like, it has nothing to do with me. This is around the time my first kid was born. So maybe that had something to do with it, right? Like, you have a kid, your perspective changes maybe. I think he was born in 2009. Anyway, I should get him in here. He's like 15 now. But like, I started thinking, okay, well, thinking about myself all the time is very, it's not a good place to be. And so I started going, I'm going to point it outwards. I'm going to make it about everybody else. And so I showed up to the field every day with a joy to inflict on other people. I wanted them to be excited to be at the field. because I knew what it was like to sometimes scroll into the field and you're like, why am I doing this? So I didn't want them to feel like that. So I kind of, and that's probably where y'all caught me in spring training is a time when I was really enjoying things because I was on borrowed time. I should have been done less than half through my career. I should have been done after like 5 or 6 years, and I ended up playing longer. So I felt like I was on borrowed time. So then it was about everybody else digging into those relationships and having fun. So the long-winded answer in that way of like, why did I keep doing it? Number one, for whatever reason, even though I tried to find other jobs, is I kept getting a baseball job. And so I knew that it wasn't about me, it was about everybody else. So I just wanted to impact, if it was my locker mate, or if it was a guy across the clubhouse, or if it was a trainer or a coach, like I felt like I had something I could help them with in whatever regard. And that's kind of how I approached probably the second half of my career of like, you know what, I'm going to show up to the field every day, not thinking what I can get out of it, but what I can, hopefully help others with. And so that was my motivation.
Well, you certainly did that. And, you've always loved the camera. The camera's always loved you, right?
Yeah. You're going off my hair right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told you I lost my beanie. I don't know where my beanie went. I lost it.
For the listeners here, Tim used to choreograph videos in the clubhouse in spring training back in the day. Absolutely hilarious. Tim, was that must have been kind of just the start. Like you said, that's probably around 2015, 2016. You still, God knows, I can't even do math now, but you probably still had 10 years of baseball left after that. But, is that like sort of, that sort of stuff in the clubhouse and in the, all the social media stuff that was starting to grow back then? Did you see that as an opportunity to say, okay, no, I can make an impression here. I got these younger guys in here. I'm making these videos. We're making some people laugh. You're doing impressions all the time. Like you're on, you're on baseball tonight. You're on all these other things. Was the media route, like, was that for sure what was in the future for you, you think?
I never thought so. Honestly, growing up, I would watch, we had 3 channels. Because I'm older.
You're showing your age, Tim.
I know.
With the black and white too, Tim?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't black and white, but it was like a huge television for whatever inches it was. I'm like, there was overkill, like speakers on the side, and we had we had WGN, and I just really enjoyed Harry Carey. So like, if it came down to like what was on TV, I'd watch a Cubs game. And this was back when, and now the Cubs are packed, but back then the Cubs had no fans in the stands. Like that was not a cool place to be. I watched every single game because Harry Carey made it great. So honestly, going back to like probably my younger years, I was really gravitated towards broadcasting probably before I was gravitated towards playing baseball. I got 2 older brothers, and they loved baseball. So they got me out on the, in the yard every day. And they were like, we're going to be shortstops today, so go play first base. So I go play first base, and they're older, and they're chunking laser beams at me in the dirt. So I had to learn how to, pick a ball. And then it was like, all right, we want to, turn double plays from second base. So then I had to learn how to be a shortstop. So, and then my brother was like, hey, I want to be a pitcher, go catch. So I learned to be a catcher. So like, I just ended up learning the game because I kind of want to hang out with them. And my dad knew everything about baseball because he played in the big leagues. He coached for a long time, pretty much my entire life. So all that was being instructed around the house was baseball. So I kind of just, of course I gravitated towards it, but I think having that arm's length distance made me really good at it, I guess, because I really didn't think I was surprised I got drafted. I was surprised I played a long time, and I just kept being surprised. When you feel like you should be doing it, there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. There's a lot of expectations that come with that. And I don't feel like I ever really lived that route. So when baseball was about to be done, I thought in I think it was 2000. Oh man, I don't remember what year, 2013. I thought I'd ran my course 10 or 11 years. I'm like, that's good. Let's get out of here. My wife was like, Twitter's a big thing. You should get on Twitter and Facebook. And I wasn't a big fan of social media from what I knew of it, because I was in the big leagues. I was in a locker between John Axford, remember John Axford, the closer, and Niger Morgan. And from what I could tell, neither one of them was using social media for a good thing. And because Niger's like, yeah, I'm going to tweet that. And I'm like, I don't know what Twitter is, but please God, do not tweet that, what you're showing me right now. You know, like, and then I'm looking at Axford, and it's like, say Axford blew a save or didn't do well. Everyone's like sending all these awful things. Yeah. And then he's retweeting the awful things, and people are attacking the person that said the awful things. And I'm like, he's like, what do you think of that? And I'm like, what are we doing? You know, I didn't know what social media was, but luckily my wife's, you know, she's awesome. She's a genius. And she was like, you need to start laying the foundation for what's next. So she was like, go get Twitter, go get Facebook. Instagram wasn't around at the time. So I'm in a basement in independent ball in Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And yeah, I'm with this host family. And I thought, okay, I'll sign up for Twitter and I'll sign up for Facebook. And what I didn't know is what would come after that. It's pretty amazing. I was able to meet people I would never be able to meet outside of social media. It's almost like a universal group text message is what it was. You could reach somebody, hey, I'm going to a city I've never been before, but people were like, hey, will you sign my baseball card? You know, I'm like, 100% I'll sign your card. Like, that's incredible. Like, so then I started to see what it could be. And then so 2015 rolls around. I'm in AAA. Again, I thought I was on my way out. I got to be done. I'm going to get fired at any moment. So I might as well start making videos in the clubhouse. And so I started making these videos. And the reason I made videos in the clubhouse really was to just like a team building exercise. Most guys, you know, they'll play cards or dominoes or board games or video games. I had done that for so many years. So I was like, we're going to make videos. It's like putting together a Lego set with your kid. You put a Lego set together, you share that time. It's not really about what you're building. It's about the time you take to put it together. And so we started making these videos, and it caught on like wildfire because no one had ever done this before. You're making videos in the clubhouse. You're not supposed to do that. And I'm like, well, I've been part of the Brewers for 15 years. They seem not to care. So, you know, I was like, Brewers, do you care? And everyone I talked to, they're like, dude, we know you. You're not going to make us look bad. You're not going to share anything in the clubhouse that you shouldn't share. So they trusted me. And so we'd make these ridiculous fun videos showing how much fun it was to be part of a team and part of a clubhouse. And to me, that can't be emphasized enough. How amazing it is to be inside of a clubhouse and be part of a team. It is special. It is unique. Every one of them is different and amazing, and you get something out of it. And to me, even to this day, like the biggest thing, I just love being part of a team. I will never get over it. So yes, all of that to say, again, I just want to be a part of something. And sometimes you got to create it in certain ways, but at the same time, when you're a part of it and it's special, like you can't get enough.
That's such a unique perspective, Tim, because I think like Petey and I always talk about glue guys, right? Like that's our thing, right? We talk about like the importance of having, you know, star power is great in the locker room. And yes, those players that are the faces of franchises, but there's so much more. There's so much more depth and breadth to a locker room. And it's the people that you meet that you realize like that guy's just as important as the guy who has 40 home runs to the team's success, right? And people don't realize that the minor league season, the baseball season, it's a long year, it's a grind. And to your point, a lot of days you stroll into that field, you don't know your purpose, you don't know why you're there or what you're doing, or if there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But it's the moments that really you really miss them. And I think, you know, obviously that testament that what you just said resonates so much and so deeply that we hope that, you know, people that message should be heard by every kid playing the game, right? Because there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and you kind of have to create your own light, I think, in a lot of different ways.
Well, I think one of the things I was fortunate because I played as long as I did. I mean, my career was able to buy tobacco, you know, like I never really thought about it that way. I just kind of kept getting a job, but I think about it now in waves. You know, there was guys that were the same age as me that came in for the first couple of years, and like we all were getting married at the same time. We were all trying to get apartments. A lot of guys, we were all roommates together, and we thought, hey, we're going to be best friends forever. And then guys go to other teams or guys get released, and you know, I kind of kept going. And then there was another wave of guys because I kept playing, and then another wave of guys. And so I start looking at them like this is how I was for the first 5 years. And then here's another 5 years, another 5 years. And I think it's interesting because you don't really know what to expect So like the first group, we're kind of dipping our toe in the water of what this whole process is. And I don't think a lot of people know what it's about, like what it takes, number one, what it demands, right? Like every day you may have the best day of your life and get, promoted, or it could be the worst day of your life and you get released, and you have to play and perform in that small area. And that's a very difficult spot to be in. So mentally, physically, you got to always be ready. But I don't know. I just was like, you know what? If I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out the best I can. So it was like, give it all you have every single game. And to know that it is a special place in the clubhouse. And to me, I don't think that gets enough credit. I think a lot of times they sell, you get a chance to play in the big leagues. I think they should sell it as, you want to be part of a team. You want to be part of a team of guys that get you, understand you, and you cannot talk to them for 10 years. And then you talk to them and you pick up right where you left off a decade ago, where you understand each other. You understand where you're coming from, what experiences you went through. And then you just hit the ground running. I talked to a guy the other day I haven't spoken to in probably 5 or whatever years, and we picked up right where we left off. Like we had never not been friends where he lived next door or something. But because I played so long, guys would come back to the field and I'd still be playing. They'd come to the bullpen and they'd be like, hey man, thanks for giving me tickets or whatever. And one of the common things I heard was, I miss the team. I miss the clubhouse. I miss the bullpens. I miss the dugout. I miss that. And some of the guys that would do that, I'm going, dude, you were the first guy that was leaving after the game. You were the last guy to show up, and you're the first guy gone after a game. But that's what I kept getting. Every teammate, every phase, every level, and I kept playing, and these guys would come back. That was the common thread. And so I was able to be like, you know what? Clearly, if the bus breaks down and we're on the side of the road, I'm supposed to somehow enjoy this, even though it seems like a tough situation to complain about later. Supposedly, I need to be enjoying this because this is what all my other teammates who I love and respect, this is the stuff they missed, was this mundane stuff. Because playing the game of baseball is very hard. It's very stressful. It's very difficult. It looks easy on TV. There's so much going on behind the scenes and before the scenes that you don't even know about, probably will never know about. You only see if they perform yes or perform no. And that's hard. That's hard. It's a very hard game. So to hear guys that they don't miss that part of it, they miss the camaraderie part of it, was very reassuring that I was on the right track to go, I'm going to start digging into my teammates every day because that's where it matters.
It got dusty in here pretty quickly, Petey. I don't know about you, dude.
I feel emotional.
And this is more of a therapy session for Petey and I than anything. That's what we talk about so much, is how much we miss the game. But Tim, obviously you landed on your feet pretty well. I think we fast forward a couple of years and the stretch of your career, you land this job with the Brewers, right? Your pregame, postgame, all sorts of stuff. You do color on some games, I believe, right? We don't know exactly who, if it's for Bally's or for Major League Baseball going forward, but
I'm not even sure. Yeah, I don't know.
What was that transition like, Tim? I mean, you work with a great crew, right? Brian Anderson, Bob Uecker. I mean, all these different wealth of knowledge that you have. What's it been like to land on your feet in that role with the Brewers?
Dude, unbelievable. Like if you're broadcasting, you get into broadcasting, most guys. The first time I did a game on the road, I think I was in Cincinnati, and I look in the booth next to me, and it's Barry Larkin. And I'm like, I'm doing the same job with the Brewers that Barry Larkin's doing. Like, I almost just walked out the door, walked out of the stadium, and just quit because I'm like, it's Barry Larkin. I have a ton of his cards. The guy should be in the Hall of Fame. He's amazing. He's an amazing player. He's still an amazing coach. I think he could even be a manager. But here he is broadcasting, and I got to talk to him and stuff. And I'm sitting there going, how am I doing the same job as this guy? Yeah, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but the transition part of it to me is easy. Don't try to be anything that you're not. Like if I started broadcasting, I'm wearing a 3-piece suit, like I'd been in the big leagues for 20 years, that would not play because I didn't play in the big leagues for 20 years. Like, I don't even know what a 3-piece suit is. I saw Jeff Suppan wear one time. And I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you need a pocket watch? Because after the smartphone came out, it's like, why would you need that? But he seemed to think it was a big deal. So there's, you want to be yourself because it translates, and you watch some of these broadcasters and you're like, what translates about him? So, Bob Uecker, the reason he translates and people resonate with him is because he doesn't think too highly of himself. He's just like, this is my career. This is how I see the game. And he has not changed in 60 years. Like, that's easy to get behind, and the reason he stands out is because so many other people try to be something that they're not. And then you got Brian Anderson, who this guy, he came up with like basketball. He's been behind the camera. He was like a camera guy. He's done golf. He's done basketball. And here he is doing baseball. And he's willing to instruct as he goes. So I fell into a very cool gig of number one, very talented people I get to work with. But at the same time, these guys are the elite of the elite. And they're calling games for a Brewers team that's very successful over the last, 7 or 8 years. So, like, if you're broadcasting for a team that's losing all the time, I'm sure that's very difficult, but I haven't had to deal with that. So I fell into a really good gig. As soon as they find out that I'm trash at this gig, like I'll be gone. But at the same time, to me, I know baseball. And I call it like I see it, and I try to do the jokes that we would do in the clubhouse or the bullpen. And sometimes you don't know, because if you're a baseball player, right, like you get stats. You can look at your stats as a baseball player and go, okay, right here it says I'm terrible, or maybe you have a season you're like, oh, I'm doing really good. It says right here I'm good as a player. But as a broadcaster, you don't have these stats. So I go by what I hear from people at the stadiums. But the best thing I ever heard was there's a starter for the Cardinals, Miles Michaelis.
Yeah.
I had never met him. We're in Milwaukee playing the Cardinals, and he's like jogging out the left field for batting practice, and he looks back at me, and I'm standing kind of behind home plate by the grounds crew, just talking to them, talking about the field or whatever, and just shooting the breeze, no big deal. And Miles Michaelis turns and he looks at me, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. And he starts jogging towards me. And I'm like, did I hit this guy in the minor leagues? Like, did I say something bad about him? Like at a game? This was this year. So I'm thinking, man, I don't think I've said anything bad. I don't dog players, man. I know how hard the game is. I'm not going to sit there and dog a player. I'm like, he jogs over to me and I'm like, all right, if he socks me, I'm ready, brother. And he comes over and he's like, hi, I'm Miles Michaelis. And I'm like, I know who you are. Are you kidding me? So we shake hands and he goes, I just want to say I've heard some of your games that you've called. Because apparently when you're calling like a game for, whatever team, sometimes you have a chance to watch whichever game. So if I'm calling a Cardinals game and he's in the clubhouse watching the game, he can pick which announcer he wants to listen to. So he's heard some of my broadcasts and he goes, I just want to say that you're doing it correctly. He goes, I love it. It's like you're calling the game from the clubhouse with the lingo that you use and the stuff that you're pointing out is what matters from the guys that are in the bullpen, the guys that are in the clubhouse, in the dugout. This is how they see the game. And I'm sitting there like, thank you, Miles Michaelis. Killer mustache, man. Like this dude's got like 10 years in the show. To me, and I'd never met him before. And I was like, did Adam Wainwright put you up to this? Because I've met him. He goes, no, I got Adam Wainwright following you on social media. I was like, what? So anyway, that kind of reassurance that players understand what I'm doing with the broadcast is really what makes the difference. Like I want the fans to care, but if a teammate were to hear a former teammate or somebody were to hear my broadcast and be like, oh, dude, what are you doing? That would hurt more than 100 negative reviews from fans that maybe don't know everything going on. So I really try to stay in the realm of baseball is super hard. It's a hard lifestyle, regardless of what you're getting paid, because there's expectations or whatever. But at the same time, make it fun, because the average fan wants to be entertained while this is going on. You can call the game and learn something about the game and make it fun. So really that's all I'm trying to do. That's how I learn how to play the game. That's how I want to call a game.
We need to get Miles Michaelis's message over to your possible next boss and Rob Manfred to make sure that make sure we will Petey will orchestrate that. Petey's got a direct line to Manfred.
Manfred, really? Wow, good for you, dude.
He's coming on next, Tim.
That's awesome. I saw you on the field in Fenway, so like, dude, you got some connections. My bad.
Javi, real quick too. Me and Tim did run into each other earlier this year. It was unbelievable. It was like outside the gate. It was one of those like just a classic Dillard. Like when he looks at you, like you lock eyes. So Tim, sort of like that the gift earlier with just like almost like a hat tip. Or like a recognition. It was awesome.
I mean, Petey might as well have a Sox jersey and pants on because he's on the field with the Red Sox more than anyone I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, there's no one who goes to baseball games more and is on the field than Steven Peterson. I'll put anyone up to that test.
Well, why wouldn't you?
It's
Fenway.
I mean, it's not only is it Fenway, Tim, but I played. I was there parts of 7 years. I know you got 18, so like I'm gonna pipe down after this. But I mean, there's so many good dudes, man, that we've come across and we played with, and you just, you become good friends with. I mean, the amount of guys you probably came across that you probably still talk to or still reach out to these days is, when that stuff happens, like you said before, it's special. It's the relationships, I got my son's 7 now, man. He loves it just as much as I do. And wanted to make sure he just turned 8. So, it's cool to have him be a part of it, man. But it was awesome. It was great seeing you. It's even better seeing you now. The hair looks awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, I lost my beanie. I could find another beanie. Hold on.
No, don't let it be.
Let it eat.
Tim, no, we're gonna ask you to put on your analyst hat here quickly because you did mention the analyst hat, no pun intended. The Brewers obviously had a magical regular season. They win the Central, and then they kind of run into the Mets buzzsaw, right? I think it was one of those things where the Mets just got absurdly hot, and we've talked about all these different intangible elements in the clubhouse, and it seemed like the Mets just had a perfect storm of guys who were playing well. They liked each other. They liked each other enough to come back in that Game 3 of the wild card series. First of all, were you in the building? And second of all, what was that like, just playing a team like the Mets that, again, just got super hot at the end of the season and unfortunately ended the Brewers season?
Yeah, I was there the last series of the year. The Brewers and Mets faced off, and then the Mets had to go on the day off, had to go play a doubleheader against the Braves, and they split it, and they ended up coming back to play the Brewers. And I wasn't there for playoffs. I was like, well, I had to come home and, be a dad. I got 2 or 3 kids.
2.5.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I got 3 kids. But yeah, like I was definitely, if they go to the next round, I was going to get back, to Milwaukee and watch. But I thought the Brewers had a fantastic team. I thought it's a disappointment they didn't go further because I think if you follow a team enough, you know how good they are, and the potential was there. If you watch what's happening now, and you look at what the Brewers did, you're like, there's some dynamic players that played well enough to be playing deeper into the postseason.
Yeah.
But that's the story of a team every single year in baseball. There's a team that should have gone further. So yeah, it's a disappointment, but these dudes are special. They were fun to watch play all season long. And I think they had a chance to win Game 1 against the Mets. They did win Game 2 and then lost Game 3, but they had a chance in Game 1. They had a chance in Game 3, and it didn't work out. So they know how good they are, and then it's about moving forward. And they also had the second youngest, offense in all of baseball, which is tough because you got guys that are just inexperienced, but they're a dynamic ball club. And I think a lot of teams are going to start going to that dynamic of like, let's go draft athletes that can run balls down in the gap, hit the ball, know how to hit the ball and where to hit the ball situationally and steal a base, like all that kind of stuff, how to get down a bunt, know to when to hit a sac fly. All that stuff is relevant, and they were playing such good baseball. I think that's what makes it a travesty they didn't go further, but you're going to see a lot of those names. I think 1 or 2, maybe 3 of those guys could win Gold Gloves. I think Pat Murphy, who was at the helm of all this and his first chance at managing the Brewers after Craig Counsell jumped to Chicago, I think he should win, NL Manager of the Year. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. So just kind of watching how they play the game is exactly how you would teach your kid to play. Yeah. This is what you do in this situation. And so he's doing that with guys that are at, some of the best. And that's what a good winning team looks like. That's why they did good all year long. They had good players, but they were coached in such a way of like, this is how you should play, because baseball's been around for however long. It's only the last 10 years or so where it's got to be like, hey, just hit a home run or strike out. And the Brewers were like, no mas.
Yeah.
Mutombo, no more of that. We're not going to sit there and strike out or hit a home run. Guess what? You can hit a ball to the right side and get a guy from second to third. And they did that, and they won baseball games. So you just proved that you can play the game the right way and be successful. So did they win the playoffs and the World Series? No, but at the same time, they had a successful season showing the world that you can play the game the right way and it still works, and it will work. And other teams, I promise, will buy in next year.
Tim, I'm surprised you didn't know like how long baseball's been around. I think you played that first season.
I was going to say 150 years. I was like 1860.
We're gonna get you out of here on this one. We're gonna put you. Javi's got your analyst hat on. We'll keep it on here. We'll act like we're on the MLB Network, and we're gonna ask you. Okay. I know you know a little bit just from in the background, kind of what's going on in tonight's games. But if we said to you, who's coming out of these championship series, and give us your World Series prediction, what do you got for us?
Man, I have no idea. Everybody roots for the underdog. So the 4 teams left, you got to root kind of for the Guardians a little bit. Stephen Vogt was a teammate for a little while in AAA years ago. Great dude. His name in the game is what every human wants to have in baseball or in life. Like, just no one's got a bad word to say about him because he's been awesome, and he's, been there, and he's performed. So now he's on the managerial side, and he's probably going to win AL Manager of the Year. He should. Doing it on such a low budget. But the Yankees are they're built. I mean, there's $300 million behind that payroll to make it happen. But I got former teammates on like every team. So I'm playing bias. I think in my older age, I realized I'm more rooting for my teammates, and the guys I know personally that I can sit there and go, good for him. As opposed to, I saw Tyrone Taylor. You see him catch that ball in the gap and almost get crushed by Marte. Yeah. I was like,
that's your full speed like that.
That was unbelievable. So we were locker mates in like 2018. And I'm like, there's T, baby, a T squared, Tyrone Taylor. I mean, it didn't surprise me at all. That's exactly what he's been doing since he was in AAA 6 years ago. So, like, everyone's like, unbelievable play. I'm like, that guy did that for me. It was, we were in the middle of nowhere, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Like, nobody was watching that game. There were 4 people at the game. There was no TV crew, but he made that play. That's the kind of guy that you can root for, regardless of what team they're on. So, I'm going to say the Yankees are going to be tough to beat, of course. And then you got Mets, and what's the score on that one? I don't even know what.
Guys, I'm going to break some news. The Guardians just tied the game in the bottom of the 9th with 2 outs.
Dude, and y'all are making me be on here when I could be watching.
We just broke some news.
My 9-year-old's in there screaming.
Well, I mean, we're going to get you out on that, Tim. I know you broke some news to us, and you want to plug. You have an upcoming show that you're launching. So follow Tim on Instagram. It is Dim Tillard, if I'm not mistaken, DIMTILLARD. So I know I didn't mess that up because I looked it up right now before I said it, because I know the letters are inverted. But follow him on Instagram. Check him out on wherever the Brewers play next year. That's where Tim's going to be pre and post game. And then Tim, tell us about your upcoming show.
Yeah, I just out of nowhere. I haven't told anybody this. This is the first time I'm sharing this. I figured I have 100 people in my phone of former teammates, so I thought, why don't I just do a show about the minor leagues, whether it's stories or just whatever, basically to garner attention of like how cool it is to be a baseball player. It's not always about baseball. So I've already had a couple of interviews. I'm going to start pumping out episodes on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's called Buses, Benches, and Baseball.
Nice.
So I don't know if that's a good name. You seem to think it was a good name. I can still change it. I haven't posted anything yet.
We love alliteration, Tim. That's beautiful. Buses,
I know, but
benches.
It's just me doing it. So like the other day, I got a buddy of mine that we came up together, and so we filmed like a little thing of kind of like this right here of us just hanging out, and then I'm just gonna post it and put some fake sponsors and commercials in there. Like ibuprofen, but instead of ibuprofen, it's ibuplayin, right? Take a couple of ibuplans and you'll be fine. You'll be playing in no time.
Damn right. Well, Tim, thanks so much for coming on the Mafia. We always tell guests that, Petey and I, we love to bring on people that we, first of all, have a ton of respect for, and second of all, emulated in our careers. I know I got drafted by the Brewers, and you were the person that everyone pointed to that, hey, be like that guy because he's a great baseball player, but also, and more importantly, a great teammate, great person. So thanks so much for all you do. We appreciate you. Got a home with the Mafia whenever you want. Buses, benches, and baseball.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Unless you got a better name.
No, it's locked, dialed. Buses.
It's a minor league podcast. And here's the thing, or not, it's a podcast, it's a show. Here's the thing. Like, people talk about the major leagues. It's like, there's a major league everything. Yeah. It's like, well, why don't you have a guest on there like Ryan Braun? It's like Ryan Braun spent a year and a half in the minor leagues. Like he's on a big league podcast. There's a whole list of those guys of big leaguers, but there's a whole 99% of professional baseball players that played minor leagues that never played in the big leagues, or played most of their career. There's so many stories. There's so many things that went on in the minor leagues that people do not know about, can't even fathom. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to tap into that to let people know what it's like to be part of something that's not always talked about, but it's pretty great.
Tim, I was going to ask to be the first guest, but it sounds like you've already recorded a little bit. Man. I'm sure you'll get me on at some point. I mean, we were roommates for long enough.
I wrote you down. I have a piece of paper. You want to see it? You think I'm messing?
Tim, I saw you writing something while we were recording.
No, I didn't write anything.
We just drinking.
No, so here's my list. I went through my phone and was like, who would be on here? Yeah. And this was my list of people from just my phone.
Wow.
So
I see Petey all the way at the bottom there. Way down there. Yeah. Way down there.
I'm the guy that's crossed off with the
Dude, I got all sorts of guys. Chris Cody's on here, Josh Wapapa, Joe Thatcher, Brent Suter, Jim Miller, Rob Scahill, Eric Almonte, Ryan Cordell, Christian Correa, Calix Crabb, Zach Curtis, Brandon Mann, Mike McClendon, Will Middlebrooks, Hunter Morris, Sam Nairn, Erasmo Maria, Stephen Peterson. Top right. Look at the top right there.
I'm on anytime you want me, Tim. I love
You got it. I'm just, dude, it's a special fraternity. You're part of something special. And it doesn't matter if you get 10 years in the show, no years in the show. Baseball is what brings people together. Francisco Lindor had a quote last year. He said, there's two things that bring people together for him. And he said, it's sports and music. That people can get on the same page when it comes to sports and music. And luckily, baseball, you just have music playing all the time, and you get to go out there with your friends and try to make something great. And to me, that's what it's always been about. And that's what I'm trying to shed light on now. Whatever show or whatever, show I'm on, whatever I'm trying to do, that's the emphasis. That's the goal.
Nothing else needs to be said, ladies and gentlemen. Tim Dillard. Thanks so much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks, boys.